Storyblocks Audio. 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 Storyblocks Audio.
putting together this message for quite a while now, and I'll explain it here in a minute. But Mark 5 is where we find the story of the man that was possessed. He was possessed. And Jesus comes along and finds him, and this is where we pick up the story. So let's read it. And it's in Mark 5, 1 through 10. It says like this. Then they went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. I don't know how to say that word. When Jesus got off the boat, a man with an impure spirit, or a man possessed, came from out of the tombs to meet Jesus. This man lived in the tombs, and nobody could bind him anymore. Not even with chains, for he had often been chained hand and feet, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons of his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself. He would hurt himself. And when he saw Jesus in the distance, he ran and fell at his knees in front of him. And he shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus?" So the Most High Son, Jesus, Son of the Most High God, he knew who he was, in other words. In God's name, don't torment me. For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "My name is Legion." He replied, "For we are many." So I've been lately, I think I've shared this before, I've been studying about addiction. I've been really researching on addiction because I'll be doing presentations on addiction. In fact, on May 28th, this month que viene, I'll be at Precinct 4 in Edinburgh, and I'm going to be doing an addiction for Precinct 4, Eli Torres. They have a place in what's that little town called down 107? San Carlos. They have their center there for Precinct 4, where many people come for many different reasons. It's a great center for the community, and they host different events and different things that they do there to help the community. And so I'm going to do an event there, an addiction, and then in October we scheduled also an event. But because what I'm doing is trying to educate, not only help us and as addicts or as people in recovery or people trying to just change our lives after prison or rehab or drug addiction, but that's why we started the Center of Hope ministry, which is across the hall here, where the family members meet that have a loved one or a son or a daughter or a husband or a wife that has an addiction. So I want to educate people about addiction. But I read this book called The Myth of Normal. The Myth of Normal. And this is where this message was born. And let me read a little bit about this book, and then you'll see where I'm going with this. In this book, The Myth of Normal, physician and trauma expert Dr. Gabor Mate makes a bold claim. He says, what we call normal in our society is actually really deeply unhealthy. Mate explains that many people problems today, whether it's addiction, anxiety, depression, chronic illness, broken families, emotional pain, are not random genetic defects. He says they are natural responses to an unnatural or broken world. This guy's not a Christian. He says, according to Mate, modern society is fast, disconnected, and stressed. I agree. They're performance driven and emotionally neglectful. From childhood, he says, people learn to suppress pain, emotions, needs, in order to survive, belong, or succeed. Starts in school. Over time, that buried pain, he said, doesn't disappear. It looks for relief. That's where addiction comes in. Mate says that addiction is not the primary problem, or alcoholism or addiction. Drug problems, in other words. It's an attempt to solve a deeper one. Substances and behaviors temporarily numb pain, trauma. They soothe trauma and they fill emotional gaps. The real question is not, what is addiction? The real question is, what is the pain? He says, in this view, addiction is not just a moral failure or a lack of intelligence or simply a disease. It's a coping strategy, he says, formed in response to trauma, disconnection, and unmet needs. In other words, there's a deeper problem. And here's the key idea. He says, if everyone is struggling, maybe the question isn't what's wrong with me. Maybe the more appropriate question is, what happened to me? I said, wow. So Mate helps us understand. So that's where I got this idea of what's wrong with me. Because in the book, he goes on to explain a lot. When you start reading about addiction, you'll start realizing that they're good at explaining things, but don't give much of a solution. Because in his book, he helps us understand the problems that we have, but he doesn't offer a complete solution. He correctly diagnoses the pain. He says, yeah, there's pain, but he cannot heal the soul. He doesn't give no solution. Where psychology helps us understand the wounds, Scripture points us to redemption and change, and that there's hope. Where the world explains brokenness, because that's what they're explaining, brokenness. Christ, the Bible, the church, Christ offers transformation. So today we're not just asking what's wrong with me, we're asking, is there a way to be made whole? And that's why we're here and choose to change. That's why I do what I do. I believe that the answer is yes. There is an answer. So I want to share this message with you that I've entitled, What's Wrong with Me? So let's look at addiction for a minute, because that's what I've been studying a lot. And I think we all have familiar with addiction, right? If you ask somebody what's addiction, they really don't know what it is. We think we know, but what is it? If we can't really define it, we don't know how to solve it. I've been working with men for years, ex-cons, drug addicts, people in recovery, years and years and years, right? And I've learned that most people have many, many problems. We all have problems, right? Depression, anxiety, ¿cómo se llama? Yeah, that one. There's a lot of mental issues going on in people's lives. What I've learned is that no matter what you call it, whether it's addiction or some mental illness, or it all boils down to the same thing. This is what I've learned. Come to the conclusion of that we are simply broken people. We're broken. And this is where, and we're in desperate need of restoration. And this is where I believe I'm going to be stepping on some toes in the recovery world. Because they don't believe it's your problem. They believe you have a disease. And we'll touch on that here in a minute. So when it comes to addiction or changing our lives, I've learned that most people have no idea what's wrong with them. They don't know. I didn't know. I remember when I was an addict, and I'd ask that question: what's wrong with me? Why am I so crazy? Why am I such a loser? Why can't I stop using? And like, if you know anything about addiction, we always try to use safely, use differently, use different methods, right? Just on weekends, once in a while, not this week. But we always fell into the addiction. Not even an addict. I mean, we don't know. We don't know what our problem is. So much less our wives or our mothers or sisters, they don't know. They just look at us like, that's why we have that room over there. So what is addiction? What I teach is that addiction is a three-part problem. And that's what it is. It's a three-part problem. It's a spiritual disease, it's a mental disease, and it's a spiritual problem, a mental problem, and a physical problem. That's what I'm teaching, right? I'm not going to go through all it, but that's what I'm teaching. I also teach that AA has the best definition of what an addiction is. I'm reading a book right now. Again, I'm reading it for the second time. It's called Addiction 101. And I mean, if you start reading it, you'll get more confused about what addiction is. But it boils down to this. It's a physical problem. In other words, some people drink, use, and they can't stop. And by the way, what is addiction? Addiction is a condition that a person develops. Now, let me read it mejor. Let me read it to you mejor. Give me a second, and I'm gonna bring this up because I forgot to post it here. So give me a second. Let me bring this up for you. Vamos a ver. So that we can, so I can say it and here it is. Copy. Addiction is a condition of a person, the condition of a person who has developed a habit with an activity or a substance that feels so good they can't stop doing it, regardless of negative consequences, even to the point of death. That's what addiction is. That's what it is. The condition is a habit. Uh-oh, let me see here. Let me do something here, guys, one more time. Bring this down. Put this here. And so then, when you look at this idea of that addiction is a condition, Chihuahua, this really messed up on me. Hold on, guys. I'm losing my information here. Why does it do that? Let's try it again. I don't understand me a second. Give me a second. I'm almost there. This is crazy. Well, I'm trying to paste something, but it keeps on messing up on me. Let's put it down here. Addiction is a condition. It's a physical condition. It's a mental condition. It's a spiritual condition. It's a habit that's developed, right? And so then, because it's a physical, mental, and spiritual condition, there has to be a physical and mental and spiritual solution. There's where what I really want to define it. So check this out. So because it is a three-part problem, body, mind, and spirit, you act and you think and you respond very differently than if you were sober. In our text that we read, this guy was possessed. Right? That's what the Bible says. And it says that the demon-possessed man demonstrated what I mean is that this demon-possessed man demonstrates exactly what an addict looks like, or what a person that's lost looks like. Addiction is physical and it has possession of you, right? You literally are possessed. When you're drunk, when you're high, you're possessed. You can't control yourself. You harm yourself. You hide and isolate yourself. Your family can't control you. And in the scripture it says the man lived in tombs and no one could bind him anymore. He's possessed. The mental problem. Your family doesn't understand you or even afraid of you. You're uncontrollable. You say crazy things. You're irrational. It's a mental thing. Physical can't control you. Mental don't understand you. The possessed man said, he shouted out with a loud voice, "What do you want with me? Jesus, you Son of God." We say things like, "Just leave me alone." Whoever said that? Just leave me alone. Nobody. Just to your family. Just leave me alone. To your wife. Just leave me alone. Not hurting anybody. Because we're twisted in the mind. It's mental. Remember, I'm talking about addiction. The brain has been hijacked. That's what I've learned. And by the way, the mind, the mental part, the mind, is a two-part. Remember I teach that in here? It has to do with how you think, your perspective. You're twisted. You don't think right. But it also has to do with what's happening actually in the brain. The brain is actually being distorted. The actual physical, the brain inside of you. That's why they call it an addiction. Because they can see what's happening in the brain. It's hijacked. You got all these wires going nuts. Your brain has been hijacked by drugs and alcohol. You're not thinking right. And then finally, the spiritual part, which overshadows everything. It's a spiritual disease, and only a spiritual solution can help us. I believe this is the core of the problem. This is the core of the problem. This is the core of what's wrong with me. That's why I start here. What's wrong with me? I'm going to help you, try to help you. That's why we come to church, to try to unravel this puzzle we call life. And it wasn't until he saw Jesus that he was able to break free. Jesus set him free. And so then, in the scriptures, when it comes to, so what is the solution, is what I'm getting to. Well, it's God, Christ. And that's what I'm going to be teaching. And that's what I mean by I'm going to be stepping on some toes. Because in the recovery world, they're good at explaining the conditions. But like I said at the beginning, they have a really hard time explaining the solution. And that's what I like talking about, the solution. The solution is that we're broken. We're broken people. In Luke 4, this is when Jesus had been fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. The devil was tempting him. Y'all remember that? The devil tempted Jesus for 40 days and 40 nights. Tempted him when he was fasting. And after he got out of that fast, he came out of the fast and he said this. Jesus said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim the captives to be released, the blind to see, and the oppressed to be set free. And that the time of the Lord has come." If God is the one that sets us free, Jesus Christ. This is why we're Christians. And until we accept that we're broken and that only Christ can help us, then we're always going to be lost. Check this out. What did Jesus come to this world to do? Who can tell me that? Come on, help me out. Why did Jesus come to this world? Why did he was born into this world? Why did he have to come? Why? To save the lost. What makes us lost? Sin. So what's our problem? What's wrong with me? I'm a sinner. Well, I don't know about that. If you look at your life from this perspective, which is what we do as Christians, then you can say, okay, I'm a sinner, so what's my solution? But if you say I'm an alcoholic, then what's your solution? You have to find another solution. In the program of AA, what is the first thing you have to say when you go into that meeting and it's your turn to talk? How do you start? In every meeting you hear this. Come on, Chavaria, you know it. Say it. My name is, and? That's right. Why do you think they do that? They say, this is how my name is so-and-so, and I am alcoholic, or I am a drug addict. Why? Because unless you accept that perspective, unless you admit, then they can't help you. Because now you have to take this perspective, this idea that you are an addict, and here's how you're going to solve this. So if you take that same method and you say, my name is Orlando and I'm a sinner, What's the difference? Some people don't like AA or the 12-step programs because they have to admit these things. They have to admit. They don't like it. And many Christians don't like it either. You know, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm a sinner. Yeah, that's right. You're a sinner. That's our problem. We're broken people. So if you accept that premise that I am a sinner, and the Bible teaches this, Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Romans 5:8, but God commended his love toward us while we were yet sinners. Christ died for us. This is the whole gospel message. And this is where we need to start our process of change. Whether you're an addict, whether you're an alcoholic, whether you're just lost in sin, whether you're just crazy. True story. You have to come to terms because that's the solution. That we're aferrado en esta cosa. That we're sinners. That's the actual solution. This is really crazy. How this my computer is just acting weird. Not sure what's going on. So there it is. So let's close with a solution. Then we'll talk a little bit. In addiction, what I'm going to be teaching is the same thing we teach in church. You need to admit you're a sinner. You need to surrender to God. You need to commit to the process. That's what I've been teaching in these rooms all this time. We need to admit we're a sinner. We need to surrender to God. We need to commit to the process. That's the only way to not only salvation in life, but to change your life. When you face the truth about that, you can be free. You know, the prodigal son, he finally came to his, what? To his senses. And that's what we have to do, right? Finally come to our senses. So what I'm trying to put together here is, instead of saying, man, I'm a drug addict, I'm an alcoholic, why can't we say, I'm a sinner? Why can't we do that? The world has a problem with that. The prodigal son came to his senses. In looking at his story, you know, he went and spent all his money. What did he spend his money on? Partying. That's what the Bible says, partying. So what would have been for today? Drugs, alcohol, women. It says he wasted his possession on prodigal living. That's what prodigal living means. Isn't that what we do? That's what you did, Chavaria, in case you didn't know. You wasted all the few dollars you had. But he came to his senses. So we have to come to our senses. We have to admit that we're wrong, that we're sinners. Accept Christ as our salvation. Accept Christ's forgiveness. That's how we start being healed. This is what you come to your senses and you start with faith. That's what that means. surrender, you give up control. In the recovery world, in the program, you have to surrender. And you have to surrender to some kind of program. You have to surrender to the program. You have to. If you want to stay sober. If you want to change your life, you have to surrender to God, is what I teach. You don't defeat your problems or your addiction by trying harder. You defeat addiction and your problems with complete surrender. That's how it works. And this is where the real struggle begins. This is why we struggle, because we don't want to surrender. We have to force ourselves to discipline our lives, to change the way we think. This is what changing our lifestyle is all about. This is what changing our mindsets is all about. This is what changing our attitudes is all about. This is what changing our habits is all about. Surrender. No one wants to admit or believe that something's wrong with you. We don't want to admit that. But we have to. If you want to change your life. Right? In the story of the prodigal son again, this is exactly what he had to do. He came to the conclusion that the real problem wasn't the drugs, wasn't all the money, that wasn't the problem. That got him into trouble. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was him. Remember what he said when he came to his senses? When he went home and he said, I'm going to go home and I'm going to say this. He's going to say, this is what he said. He said, I have messed up. I have sinned. That's what he said. I'm a sinner. Because he said, I'm the one that messed up and in the eyes of God and my Father. He came to the conclusion that the real problem wasn't the drugs, wasn't the womanizing, wasn't the wild living, it was him. The problem was that he was a very selfish, self-centered person, and the real problem was him. What's wrong with me? He surrendered. He stopped running his life his way and fully placed his life under God's authority. That's what we do is coming to church. That's what we do. You know, the more I read this idea of addiction, all the solution they give is about support and connection. That's what they say. Psychologists and psychiatrists and drug counselors, it's okay, you need support, you need connection. You need to identify your triggers. You need new relationships. Well, what do you think we do here? So we surrender. So once you surrender, the last thing, the third, it's admit, surrender, and the third thing was commit. What are we committing to? The process of change. Whether it be in some kind of counseling and mentoring program, or 12-step program, or psychiatrist program, or the church. Right? Choose a change. Fellowships, Bible studies. That's the process we're committing to help us change these things. Commit to rebuilding your life through obedience, accountability, and service. ¿Qué dijo el prodigal son? Count me as a servant. I'm not worthy to be a son. That's called humility. Humbling yourselves. I almost did a message today on the 7 deadly sins. You know what the first one is? Pride. Pride. See, this is why the Bible teaches us that we have to crucify what? The flesh. Ourselves. You know, the more I learn, the more I'm a Christian, the more the older I get, the more I realize how much I need God. How much I can really mess up my life really like this. Could you, Chavaria? Pretty easy, no? Like that. And we all have seen it, right? People leave the church, leave to the change, forget this process, forget this. And what do? They crash. Because there's no discipline, there's no accountability, there's no humility, there's no surrender, and you're back to square one. Sin. Righteous living. So we need to pick up our cross and follow him. Follow him. What do we mean by when we're following Jesus? We're following some guidelines in life. Rights and wrongs. For starters, the 10 Commandments: don't kill, don't steal, don't. Simple stuff. It's not rocket science. So the process for us, what does it look like? Coming to church, coming to Choose the Change, coming to Bible studies, fellowships, and so on. That's what it starts. And this is the program we need. This is the process we need to change our lives, to change our mind, to restore our lives. That's what I'm going to be offering people. Because I come to the conclusion, the reason I started really everybody's looking for answers. Everybody. And then when it comes to drugs and alcohol, and people don't want to come to church, they're trying to find solutions. Everybody's trying to find a solution. So they go to yoga, they go to Buddha, they go to different things. Curanderas, right? They really do this, trying to find solutions. I believe we have the ultimate solution. I'm convinced of that. So you need to admit, surrender, and commit. This isn't behavior modification. This is life transformation. Through behavior modification. And that's how it works. Any questions? Let's pass around our donation bucket. I'm convinced I need to give. Any questions? Give me some comments, guys. Because I'm actually putting all this together to be able to explain it better, articulate it in a better way. Yes,
so
sir.
If I wasn't like identifying to be a Christian, somehow I would be identifying myself to be something else.
Yes, you would. That's correct. Right. You did in the past.
Yeah.
I'm this. I'm that. Right?
Unconsciously. But yeah. I constantly have to be putting myself on check, and it helps me to be disciplined, knowing all these things, because when you get out there, people are actually they're not intentionally gonna try to test you, but the people are people. Sometimes you get rubbed the wrong way, and you want to say something, but knowing you could just really take it in the wrong direction, you just say, you know what, I just rather avoid that situation and just do the right thing. And because sometimes you won't be able to change the situations. You just got to have peace in yourself and continue moving forward, right? Which is the most important part.
Yep. And just a couple of instances, you gave me ideas that when you, in your job, you just have to deal with it.
Yeah, I remember some guy. I was telling him about that I go to church, and it's only through church that through Jesus Christ that I was able to stop the way I used to live. He told me, you could stop without it. You don't have to go to church. I told him, I'm telling you, without Jesus Christ, this is who I am. I don't have hope if it wasn't for Jesus Christ. I'm telling you. And then from there, he realized that I'm being honest, because some people, that's all we have, Jesus Christ.
Yep.
And if not, then you're gonna identify with in another way. It's just like me personally, I'm a better person for it, and I could like really be a better person in the community because of it. So I
That's
thank
right.
God because of that.
That's right. And so then it starts to come to that conclusion, especially for men who didn't go through much, right? Many people never come to that conclusion. But because we had to, right? And you can say we did. We had no choice. Who else was going to go visit us in prison? Or I mean, who else helps us in our hopelessness? Who? I like what you said. Man, what did you say? About identifying. Because everybody wants that's what the world is all about, identity, how they see themselves, how they dress, that's what tattoos are all about. That's what earrings and piercings is all about. That's why we put tattoos on. Because we wanted a certain identity. Right? And so then that identity, because we don't know what was wrong with you, because you didn't know what was wrong with you. What was wrong with us is we're sinners. We're broken. And according to the Bible, God can help us, Jesus Christ. Some people say, well, I don't believe that. Well, you don't have to. I do this, I do that. Hey, and some people are going to say, and this works for me. That's great. But I think I like the way I like explaining it. I took a chance. I took a chance. I took a chance. And it worked. I really believe that he who began a good work in me will continue it. All right. Anybody else? We're good? So I guess I'll close it. Next week, we're going to have a special guest. So stay tuned. And so we'll see you next week. That's all I have. Thank you for watching.